This is Kevin, everybody. He helps predominantly runners kind of achieve their first 10Ks. And we're going to talk all about his journey from someone that used to be meticulous with calorie counting to not really kind of giving a crap anymore. So, Kevin, that was a bit of a poor introduction to who you are. Maybe you can do a bit better and, yeah, start us off with kind of an overview of your experience when it came to calorie counting, when that first kind of journey started.
Yeah, so quick introduction. My name's Kevin, online fitness coach, predominantly focus on running as that is the main sort of thing I focus on with my own training. So it's kind of helping people go through the same journey with running that I have, from basically dying running a 5K to now tackling ultra marathons and marathons as well. I've got a marathon later this week, actually. So excited for that. When it comes to the calorie side of things, so yeah, I feel like in recent times I've done a complete 180 on this. So as soon as I got into training properly, that was maybe, let's say 10, 12 years ago. And throughout that whole time, like calorie tracking, calories in, calories out, that was like the main thing when it came to any form of sort of body composition, getting lean, which is why we all started training in the first place. We want to look good. So I was calorie tracking all the way through very religiously. Every single bit of food I ate, every single drink I had went straight into my MyFitnessPal for the longest time. And then I think it was maybe 3, 4 months ago is when I really started pulling back on it. Like I realized I didn't really have any body composition goals at the minute. I was traveling a lot more as well. So one holiday, I just was like, I'm just not going to try. What's the worst that can happen, right? I'm gone for 5 days. And I went through that. And I think for the longest time, I would have really sort of psyched myself out if I wasn't tracking things. And I didn't track anything. And, life went on, eating the foods I wanted. I didn't go like absolutely ham on foods either. I was eating when I was hungry, had a treat here and there as well. It was in Oz actually. So, had a Yoshi when I wanted to. And
Yeah.
life was good. And
Yeah.
then I came back from said holiday and I'd actually lost half a kilo, but I was basically like came back the same way. And I was like, oh, all right. So if I actually just listen to sort of what my body needs, just don't be an idiot with my eating. I think I took a lot of learnings anyway from the years of tracking in terms of what and how much I should be eating as it is, and then still go out and enjoy myself. You can still keep things pretty much in check. So after that point, I just stopped tracking almost
Mm.
completely.
When we first met in person as well, I remember you kind of said it was a live call that we were both on, and you mentioned what kind of promoted this, like want to not even track was it's like seeing a bit of my content and just how kind of different that was to most kind of fitness and nutrition coaches because everyone that we know who coaches clients, tracks themselves and forces their clients to track as well. So I guess, yeah, why did you kind of actually do it in the first place? And why do you still do it now as well?
Yeah, I think I would definitely. I remember talking to you about this, where I was like, you definitely planted that seed there because a lot of times I know the whole concept of intuitive eating is out there and there are people who do it, but it's not like it's a very, very big thing. And I think a lot of the messaging around it is you need to really build yourself up to a point before you take that leap and do that. But then actually seeing what you're doing with your clients, where you're getting people from square one and say, hey, look, let's actually just teach these habits straight away, right from the start. Like don't do the whole years and years of tracking first and then just go straight into learning how to do it. And seeing the success that you had is like, okay, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a thing that you learn how to do. You can just go out and do it. That's the thing that kind of excited me about the whole idea. And honestly, as soon as I started doing it for a longer period of time, this is where I started resonating a lot with what your clients were saying in terms of how they felt after, and a lot of the content you were posting out in terms of just like you take away that need to be like confined and controlled, and you can actually just relax a little bit more. And
Mm.
that's really what I found and really what I enjoyed about it. It was like you're looking at food and be like, I don't have a scale. Like, what do I do now? Right? You can be like, okay, look, there's like there's a bit of food there. I'm gonna eat it, and again, nothing bad is gonna happen to me. And I think overall that really helped me with my own relationship with food as it was, because again, things turned back to being like food was food, and food wasn't like a number. I think that was a huge turning point for me in terms of just again my day-to-day eating, really. If that
Mm.
answers your question, I rambled on a bit
It does. It
there.
really does. And my journey is, I'd be interested to know if you're happy to share a bit about, how taxing food was for you, because I'm, very open about my kind of history and the disordered kind of elements to my eating. And now how free my life feels. Was it as kind of rough for you, or not as kind of demanding? And it was maybe
I
just
wouldn't,
more exhausting.
yeah, it was just more. I wouldn't say I've like come like with any sort of like any disorder or anything like that. I wouldn't say I would come from that point. Like I've always been pretty consistent with my eating. It's always been around my training, around my sport as well, at least for the last 10 to 12 years. It was getting to the point that I was kept doing it. It's so monotonous that it was almost like a second job almost. And that was the nice sort of breath of fresh
Yeah.
air that I had when I stopped. It's just like, you don't have to go through all of that effort and to get the same result actually. And especially the last couple of months, I was very much maintaining, if not staying in my leaner look without actually doing any of that. So I was like, okay, so if you just install all the habits that you have in place and take that away, like you can still be absolutely fine. So from that side of things, I'd say, yeah, the effort that was going into it, you didn't need to be put into it, and you can actually just take that energy and put it elsewhere, which I
Mm.
think just benefited a lot more other areas in my life.
How so?
More just like, again, it's just one less thing to worry about. Like when you're going on a date night with the missus, like you don't have to be like, oh, I have to be control like worried about what I'm putting, like what I'm ordering, what I'm eating, and things like that. Let's see if I go to Yochi, like, am I leaning towards the fruit because I know it's calorie dense? Like, or do I just put the cookie on there? Like, we all know I'm gonna go for the cookie anyway. But you don't have to have like, oh, it feel like almost that feeling of guilt of like you see the cookie, it's like 150 calories, 200 calories. Like, oh, is this worth it? You know what? I'm gonna enjoy it, and I'm sure over time it will balance out. So it's just little small things like that that you I think when you're doing it, you don't really notice it because, again, if you've been doing it for months and months on end, it just becomes the norm, right?
Yeah.
So actually taking that away, and you're just like, oh, it's like a breath of fresh air. You're like, you didn't have to do any of that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what it does is it creates consistency through that because it becomes something that isn't so meticulous, restricted, and you feel almost kind of locked up. I guess bridging on that then, considering the state of the fitness and nutrition industry right now when it comes to coaching is so heavily weighted on pretty much this one rule to losing weight is just a calorie deficit and is just to be in kind of a focused state around tracking your calories. What is your kind of view now that you kind of have seen the other side, realize that there isn't just this one-dimensional approach to weight loss? And what do you kind of make about the entire industry as a whole now that you kind of understand that aspect?
Well, I
Does
just
that
think in
question
this
make
day,
sense?
yeah, it is. I think
Yeah.
in this day and age with the fitness industry, it's like everything needs structure and order, right? So let's look at strength training. You need the programs to do everything, and everyone thinks that's where the value is. When you're doing a running plan, what intervals are you doing, what paces are you running? That's where everyone likes to put their attention, and food is no different. Like what calorie targets you, how much protein are you having? But to get to these points and for these points to be effective, we need to look at the fundamental habits that we're trying to build in place. So with the eating side of things, right? Like, are we just making sure our food options are the best options that we can have that are available to us? Are we making sure our food hygiene is good? Are we eating in the right times? Are we being mindful of what we're doing? Are we being mindful of our own body signals in terms of are we hungry? Are we full? Are we satisfied? So this stuff gets overlooked. But
Yeah.
if you're not addressing those things as it is, the calorie side of things will always struggle because you can
Mm.
have someone on calorie targets, but if they're not in tune with their how their body responds to food and that relationship to it, the calorie targets are almost going to make it so much worse because you haven't actually like attacked the actual fundamental habit that we need to develop, which is again
Yeah.
getting people choosing the right foods, making sure they're in line with their hunger signals and eating when they need to eat rather than when a calorie tracker or a meal plan tells them to. You can say the same with like training and running, right? The fundamental end goal of training is to get you lifting weight at a certain intensity. You can do that without the program, technically. And the running as well. We want to get people out and moving, right? That's the whole idea. Once we get that habit there, then yes, we can make it a bit more specific based on what the client wants. But if you don't have those habits, you can't really build anything from there.
It's almost a bit of a broken system, like it's a false start in a way because the people kind of teaching it are the people that are still kind of hooked on the calorie counting aspect themselves and no different really. I guess It's a bit of a funny one to think about here, but like, could you have imagined? I know it's only been a few months since you haven't been counting calories, but God, I've spoken to some people, clients that I work with even, that have calorie counted for decades, and literally joked on the call with me that hey, they'd probably still be 60 and doing it if they hadn't met someone like me. So I think it's an interesting and a funny kind of situation where like we do calorie counting as a means to lose weight, give us that education, but no one really jumps ship from it, until,
Yeah.
because they think that's the only kind of aspect and that's the only kind of direction. It's an interesting kind of
It,
thought,
it
for
is a
sure.
fascinating thing. I always think like even with the tracking, the end goal is to get people to like the way I teach it clients is you want to get yourself to a point where you can do these things without tracking. That has to be the number one goal because that's if people are looking for this again sustainable way to maintain their weight and be good with their eating, like that's the final point is how to intuitively eat based on what your body needs and what you're putting it through without the need to track and everything like that. I think that has to be the end goal. And if people lose sight of that, then they're just going to go in circles for
Yeah.
up to for decades, like you said, and
Yeah.
wonder why these things haven't gotten any better.
I say it to all my clients, particularly whenever I meet someone new that is, potentially becoming a client. I'm like, look, we don't want any of this process to feel hard, whether it's training, whether it's nutrition, whether it's just the plan that we've set out in general, because if we can't follow it for 6 months, like we're not going to follow it for 6 years. And,
Mm.
if we don't plan on doing that, then it's just wasted time in itself. So, man, it's interesting. I guess,
Yeah, yeah.
how do you leverage, because you're a runner, right? And it's very important, particularly big runs like marathons, that you have an understanding as to what you're putting in your body for a fuel point of view, but also a recovery point of view. So how do you kind of leverage that now without being super kind of disciplined when it comes to tracking and counting everything?
So when I'm in normal, so to preface this, the only time now I will make sure that I'm tracking is during a carb load itself, and when I'm figuring out how many carbs I should have during these longer runs. That's a little bit less calorie tracking, more how many gels do I bring, and you can do that with time and just the gels that you have. So that's a little bit easier to do without actually you're not really weighing or putting those on MyFitnessPal. But the carb load is probably the only time where I do track, and that's mainly because you're already going to eat past the point of hunger. So that's where I find it's a little bit challenging to rely on that alone because you'll
Mm.
probably undereat in that regard. Because you could eat, for example, for perspective, I'll have to eat around 800 grams of carbs. That's a lot of food that you have to put in one day. You're probably full after 450 to 500, realistically, and anything after that will probably feel equally as uncomfortable after, which is again not
Yeah.
ideal in the grand scheme of things. I will very much stress that if I wasn't doing the long run after, I would not be eating that way.
But
It's
I
it's a
think it's
very
really
very
important to caveat because,
yeah
like, people, and I don't know the origins. Maybe I should have kind of Googled it before we jumped on. But I'm certain that the reason, kind of main, in my eyes, the people that should be counting are the people that really have high stakes, like athletes and bodybuilders, for example, like people that have like huge deadlines that like every kind of calorie counts, not just like James or Scott or Cindy from work that, just wants to lose like 5, 10 kilos and jump on a beach and feel a bit more confident. Like we take this very extreme kind of measure where we treat ourselves like this scientific experiment where every single calorie is so important when in reality it's like, well, why do we have to take it to such an extreme measure? But I think it's important that you do it in those times where you need to, because,
yeah
at the end of the day, if you don't pay attention to this, you are going to blow up on that run and, you aren't going to
no
perform your best self.
exactly that. I think like the most eye-opening thing here is I've been in the running scene for or training for the runs as much as I have been for the last 2.5 years now. I think
Mm.
the 4 months that I did without properly tracking during the week were probably still some of my best running months as it was. So I think when you're training, like in those periods, you can do it with just making sure that you're eating the right foods around certain things. So, for example, from a recovery standpoint, if you're making sure that you're having a source of carbs, fast digesting before your run, and something similar
Yeah.
with a bit more protein in it after, as long as you know you're hitting those. And I think metric, I think if you're doing this from a running standpoint without tracking, the one metric you do have to track is the body weight side of things. Again, that's a good way to know that you're getting it right. I always, like, for myself, I'm always trying to maintain my weight when I'm pushing the running. You don't want that dropping really. You don't really want that going up either, because both of those will have an effect on your performance. So if you track body weight and you see that's just absolutely cannonballing down, like, okay, I know that with what I'm anyways eating, I can just up the portions a little bit. Just put like
Yeah.
another scoop of rice, maybe another bagel thrown in there. Like, you can make those adjustments without, again, having to track your calories to know how much, if you're eating a
Yeah.
little bit
And
more.
you're spot on, like by what you were saying there about, hey, if I'm noticing that I'm losing weight, I'll just increase my appetite, like I'll increase a portion, for example. Like I see whether it's clients that I'm working with or myself, like it's just data. Like if I'm noticing that, hey, I'm not getting as strong in the gym, for example, or yeah, my fatigue is worse in boxing or on runs, I'm like, right, am I eating enough? Like that's always the first thing that I'm going back to, because typically I'm pretty good with fluids, with sleep, with stress management. Um, and yeah, it's fascinating to me that we've kind of like stopped ignoring and listening to our own bodies, and we've just started tracking and focusing on the numbers, which like don't actually tell us anything about how we're actually doing. Like, because they have no actual link.
For
Like
sure.
I'm talking just about calories here.
Yeah, I think the body is a fascinating thing. The body will tell you exactly what's going on. Like, I had a
Yeah,
very similar conversation. I know it's not necessarily with the calories, but with a client I just onboarded regarding the runs and things like the Garmin and the data it gives you. I was
yeah,
saying, like, look, the Garmin can tell you your HRV is low and you need to recover a little bit more. But I guarantee if your HRV is like tanking down, you will wake up that morning, feel like you've been hit by a truck. You will know straight away. Like, you don't need your watch to tell you that. Like,
yeah,
and the more you actually spend the time to be in tune with how you are feeling and knowing when to push, when to not push, when to eat more, when to eat less, like that's the thing I think most people are missing. Again, like that's like
yeah.
the habit that we want people to learn when they're doing all of these things. Like if they do any form of diet, you want to learn how to be in tune with what the body's telling you and make the adjustments accordingly.
Yeah, spot on. And I think it's a really good way of closing up in itself is, I wish the body could talk in a way, because it tries to. Like when our stomach growls at us and it pangs, that's an indication that, hey, I'm really hungry, like feed me. When our muscles are tired, that's an indication that they've been worn too much, or you need to like fuel properly to recover them. Like it's giving us all the telltale signs and it's trying to tell us, but it's just unable to because it can't actually physically communicate that. But because we've been, and it's no one's fault. It's just the fact that it's everywhere, that we are just told, to ignore this kind of stuff and, be disciplined with the numbers and stick to the plan, that we just completely ignore what our body's trying to tell us, which is in reality the most important thing.
I think I 100% agree. I think like it's a funny thing, and this is so bitchy. I think like the body is telling you exactly what's. I don't think that's ever stopped. I think we just need to get better at listening to what
We're
what it's
ignoring
actually
it. Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
exactly
all it
that.
always
Like,
has. We just now ignore it more than ever.
yeah, no, 100% agree.
Um, Kevin, this was awesome, man. I appreciate you jumping on. I feel like a podcast host because I'm gonna go, hey, where can everyone find you? Should they find your content online?
Well, the Instagram is probably going to be the best place. It's what Kevin Fields _coaching. Bit of a longer one,
Cool.
but that's
Yeah,
where it is. I did think about that
cool.
actually.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was like, yeah, what?